Not the heat of a sun or the burn of a wound, this was softer. A pulse against his ribs. Slow. Steady. Not his. Eli's eyes opened to white light, blinding and cold, the kind that never flickered because machines didn't tire. His wrists were chained to the floor, his breath fogging the air. The smell of sterilized steel and blood. Then, movement. A shadow just beyond the glare. A whisper brushed his jaw. Human. The word trembled, unsure of itself. The voice didn't belong in this place, it was too alive, too careful. He turned, muscles stiff, and found her, crouched a few feet away, blue skin catching the light like frost. Ears tipped with soft fur, hair matted, eyes the color of a midnight ocean. A shackle circled her ankle, its chain disappearing into the wall. She watched him like he might vanish. They'd told him what she was. Feral. Born to kill. Couldn't be reasoned with. A monster dressed as grace. But monsters didn't touch your face like that. When her hand lifted again, hesitant, Eli didn't flinch. He'd been beaten for days, questioned until his voice broke. The Dominion soldiers had laughed when they dragged him here. Let's see if the beast wants a new toy. Now the laughter felt far away. All he heard was her breath. She leaned closer, sniffing, curious. When he whispered his name, she tried to repeat it, her tongue catching on the syllables. E-Lee. It sounded like prayer. Something cracked inside him. Not fear, something gentler, dangerous in its own way. He noticed the marks along her arms, old scars crossed by newer ones. She'd been punished for something, maybe for being gentle in a world that demanded rage. He reached for the water pouch strapped to his belt. The guards had forgotten to take it. Carefully, he tipped it toward her. She froze, eyes wide, then crawled closer on quiet limbs and drank from his hand, never looking away. Through the reinforced glass, two red-skinned officers whispered to each other. She's supposed to tear him apart. Give it time. But they didn't see what Eli saw, how her shoulders loosened, how her trembling slowed once his hand brushed her hair back. Silence spread. The hum of the ship filled it, low and constant. He leaned against the wall, and she moved with him until her head rested on his chest. Her body was cold, her heartbeat uneven. He could feel every breath, every small surrender. Chains clinked softly whenever either of them shifted. When the lights dimmed to simulate night, Eli spoke into her hair, barely audible. You're safe now. He didn't believe it yet. But saying it felt like planting a flag in a place no one thought he'd ever stand. Outside the glass, Commander Vex watched the monitor, voice measured and sharp. Fascinating, he murmured. The human soothes the beast. Inside the cage, Eli closed his eyes as the alien girl's heartbeat steadied against his own. And for the first time since capture, he slept. The lights never rose above gray. Time didn't move in this place, it crawled. Eli woke to the sound of chains sliding. Lyra was sitting cross-legged a few feet away, tracing lines in the dust with one clawed fingertip. She looked up when he stirred. The way her lips curved wasn't quite a smile, but it wanted to be. He remembered the way she'd fallen asleep against him. The warmth that had surprised him in that sterile cage. Now she studied him like he was some strange, beautiful animal. Eli, she said softly. The name came smoother this time. He grinned despite the ache in his ribs. Lyra, he replied, the sound foreign but soft on his tongue. She blinked, startled, then touched her chest. Lyra. The name seemed to settle between them, a secret the walls couldn't steal. He spent the hours teaching her words. Simple ones, light, water, friend. She learned fast, repeating each syllable with fierce precision. But when he pointed to himself and said human, she tilted her head. Heart, she corrected, placing her palm against his chest. He wasn't sure if she misunderstood or understood too well. Later, the guards returned. They brought no food, just a thin vial of nutrient gel they tossed through the grate. It rolled to Lyra's feet. She froze. One of the guards sneered. Eat, beast. She didn't move. Eli picked up the vial and pressed it into her hands. It's okay, he whispered. Take it. When the lights went out for the night cycle, the cold crept in. Eli shifted closer, offering his body warmth without a word. She hesitated only a second before sliding near, her tail curling loosely around his leg. Her skin was cool, faintly luminescent. She whispered something then, soft, musical, the cadence of a lullaby. He didn't know the words, but they filled the cell like a promise. "What's that?" he asked. Her gaze lifted, unfocused. "Song of Stars," she said slowly, searching for the right words. "My people sing when, not afraid." He swallowed. "When they're free?" She nodded, then leaned her forehead to his. "You, make not afraid." He wanted to believe that. But he could feel the eyes watching through the mirrored glass. Could almost hear Commander Vex's clinical curiosity. He knew they weren't safe, not really. But her breath on his skin made it easy to forget. Hours passed. She dozed in his lap, her hand resting over his heart, matching its rhythm. For the first time in years, Eli didn't feel like an experiment or a weapon. He just felt seen. Outside, Vex's voice carried faintly through the comm. "The data's clean. Tomorrow we escalate. Let's see how she reacts to pain." Eli didn't hear it. He was too busy memorizing the way her lashes trembled in sleep, the way her pulse brushed against his wrist. He didn't know it yet, but the next sunrise would draw blood. They came for him before the lights brightened. No warning. Just the hiss of the door and the hard rhythm of boots. Lyra woke first, ears flicking, nostrils flaring. She hissed, low and raw, as two guards stormed in. Eli barely had time to reach for her before they slammed a shock rod into his ribs. Pain arced through him, white-hot, stealing breath and thought alike. Lyra lunged. Her chains snapped her back, the metal biting into her ankle. She roared a sound that shook dust from the ceiling. The guards laughed. "Easy, pet. You'll get your turn." They dragged Eli out of the cage. He caught one last glimpse of her, claws digging into the floor, eyes wild with terror. He tried to speak, but the door sealed with a hiss that swallowed everything. They strapped him to a cold slab in the adjoining lab. He didn't fight. There was no point. The Dominion wanted to measure pain, to test cross-species empathy. He could hear Vex behind the glass, calm as ever. "Begin." The current hit, burning through muscle and memory. He bit back a scream. Somewhere behind the wall, Lyra's muffled cries rose to match his. Every pulse of electricity pulled her closer to the edge. Her claws raked the wall until sparks flew from the metal. When his scream finally broke free, something in her did too. The cuffs around her wrists glowed red, then shattered. Vex turned sharply. "Restrain her." The door burst inward before he could finish. Lyra moved like lightning and wind and fury. But it wasn't a killing rage, it was protective. She didn't strike at the guards, she tore the cables from the machines, sent sparks raining down, then knelt beside Eli. He could barely see, but he felt her. Cool hands on his face. A trembling voice saying his name over and over. "Eli. Eli. No hurt. No more." He smiled through blood. "You broke the cage." Her eyes flared with light. "You break heart," she whispered, pressing her forehead to his. Together. Alarms screamed through the corridor. Red lights washed everything in feverish color. She lifted him easily, her strength no longer hidden, and ran. Guards fired, bolts of plasma searing the walls. Eli held on, half conscious, the world narrowing to her heartbeat thundering against his chest. They ducked through maintenance tunnels, their shadows flickering in the chaos. Lyra moved like she'd known these halls forever. Eli's head rested against her shoulder, the air thick with smoke and ozone. When they finally stopped, hidden behind a collapsed bulkhead, she laid him down gently. He tried to sit up, failed. She leaned close, eyes soft again, voice breaking. "Stay. I protect." He touched her cheek, smearing blood against blue skin. "Not a beast," he whispered. Her lips brushed his temple, a kiss as fragile as breath. "Not a prisoner," she answered. Outside, Vex's voice crackled through the shipwide comms, cold and controlled. "Seal all exits. Kill them both." Lyra's gaze met Eli's. Fear and resolve, tangled. Then she said it, soft and steady. "Then we run faster." The world tilted as they fell. Metal shrieked, alarms howled, and the escape pod became a comet burning through the atmosphere. Eli barely remembered the launch, just Lyra's hand gripping his. Her body braced over his as fire streaked past the viewport. Then, impact. Silence. The smell of scorched soil. He opened his eyes to green light. A jungle stretched out in every direction, vast and bright, steam rising from the wreck. He coughed, pain ripping through his side. The Dominion's dreadnought was gone from the sky. Only drifting smoke marked where they'd escaped. Lyra. She stirred beside him, hair tangled, skin luminous under the alien sun. She was bleeding from a cut along her temple, but alive. He reached for her hand, warm now, not cold, and she blinked, dazed, before focusing on him. Eli. The way she said it made his chest tighten. Not a question. A homecoming. He tried to sit up, failed. She helped him, slipping an arm around his shoulders, careful and sure. The forest buzzed with strange life, echoes of calls and rustling leaves, but it felt cleaner than any air he'd breathed in years. "We free," she said, testing the words like they were fragile. He smiled weakly. "For now." She looked toward the sky, as if she could still feel the Dominion's eyes. "They come again." He shrugged, wincing. "Maybe. But they'll find an empty cage." For a long while, they just sat there. The jungle wind combed through her hair. He watched the way sunlight caught in her eyes. The silence wasn't heavy, it was tender. After everything, words would only cheapen it. When she finally moved closer, pressing her forehead to his, the gesture was the same as before, but everything had changed. No chains, no glass between them, no watchers behind mirrored walls. Just two beings breathing the same wild air. He felt her heartbeat through his chest. Slow. Steady. "Stay," she whispered. "Here. With me." Eli laughed, hoarse and small. "Where else would I go?" Night fell quickly. They built a small fire from the wreckage, its glow painting gold across her blue skin. She sat beside him, tail coiled around her legs, watching the flames with wide, wondering eyes. "Stars different," she murmured. He followed her gaze. The constellations here were unfamiliar, no Earth, no mapped sky. "Yeah," he said. "Different's not always bad." She leaned against him, exhaustion pulling her down. "Sleep," she whispered, as if the word itself was mercy. Her head rested on his chest again, just like the first night, but now her breathing was easy. He wrapped an arm around her and let his own eyes close. The forest hummed softly around them. For the first time, there were no walls. No orders. No fear. Just the rhythm of her heartbeat and the slow drift of dawn breaking through alien leaves. He looked at her once more before sleep took him, wild and gentle, the so-called feral girl, then whispered into her hair. "Not a cage anymore." And the world answered with silence that finally felt like peace.